Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever it is in the world, wherever you are tuning in from. Gill, you're in California, so I guess it's early to mid-afternoon?
It is 2:22 local time. Thanks for having me,
Okay,
John.
that's nice. No, Gill, great for you to join us. It's 11:22 here in Germany, 10:22 in the UK. More importantly and more significantly, regarding the French Open, I would like to start at the end and work backwards. It's freshest in my mind, perhaps in yours too. Um, Give us your immediate thoughts on Holger Rune against Casper Ruud.
Okay. Attention was somewhat split during this, but the first two sets had my full attention as I had to record something during the third and the fourth. But ultimately, the result was for me in terms of how we got to it, something that I suspected could be a possibility. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect it to be the start of the match where it seemed like Holger was not fully able to engage physically. I figured if anything, that would be towards the end of the match.
Yeah.
But coming in, I had just been concerned about what we saw with Rune in the previous round against Cerundolo, because when you really look at when Holger started to feel his legs and started to kind of desperately point shorten and go into energy conservation mode, it was really in the third set against Francisco.
Yeah.
And it was whoa, okay, it's pretty early for that to be happening. And look, you do get a day off, you get to recover, but coming into that match against Ruud, although I before the tournament predicted Rune to be in the semifinals, I just felt at this point he's not going to be able to do this physically, and I did not foresee how extreme that would be for the first two sets, but ultimately, I think there's been a compilation, a cumulative effect of Rune's physical clay court season, and his body really seemed to break down here.
I think there's a couple of things that I'd like to react to. It was kind of a Cerundolo match in reverse, physically. It seemed like he had a bit of a hangover coming into the first. I actually turned the TV on, and before turning on, I knew I was about 10 minutes in. So, depending on what happens, you could be one game or three games in. And I had a feeling, just a feeling, and these feelings, by the way, are they come from somewhere, and I prefer to look at them in a scientific way. In that, I actually think they come from experience deep down somewhere in our brains. Where it's actually something. When we go, oh, I've seen this before, we think it's something like emotional, but probably it's coming from a calculated area. And in fact, I just had a feeling that Holger would be a breakdown. He turned out it was a breakdown. And the reason I say reverse to that previous match is actually it was kind of a hangover coming in for the first two sets. And actually he became energized when things got a bit desperate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there could be some scientific explanations to this, like if you're very, very sore, there's lots of lactic acid in your muscles. Sometimes getting your body going, the oxygen and fatiguing yourself a little bit actually gets the lactic acid out. So, I mean, that's one explanation, or maybe it really was just a matter of loosening up, or was it a psychological thing where he knew he wasn't really 100% and it was kind of tactical where he was trying to win as a serve and volley or as somebody who is going to try to keep the points very, very short and hit second serves big, which was definitely something he came out of the gates doing. And it just resulted in frequent double faulting. So maybe it was calculated in that way. But you're totally right. I mean, I had a feeling even after the first two sets, like, okay, at a certain point, he's going to dig in physically, right? Like it's not going to be like this the whole time. It was definitely, though, when you take like the full picture of it, we've seen this a lot. The Monte Carlo final, the Munich final, and to some extent, the Rome final. Holger has not been able to just play 100% intensity the whole match. You know, like if he has to go 3 hours, usually what we see is up and down and up and down. And he's actually won a lot of matches like that. He's good at feeling it out and conserving his energy, but is it really the ideal world to live in? No, the ideal world to live in is you trust your legs and you can give 100% of your effort every single point.
And not over 15 days, 5 sets every 2 days, if you like, of a Grand Slam. I do think there was an anxiety to him as well. Whether that was brought on by it being in a hurry. I actually wrote the expression. He often does come across this way, whether it be the way he sort of pulls up his shorts as he's about to return serve, and then he sort of eagerly runs in to return that serve. And by the way, I think it brings him more rewards than anything. But there is an anxiety about him, and there was an anxiety about him for probably 2 and a bit sets today. And it probably he did need to loosen up. I also made a note as well of Ruud. He's been here before. He knows this terrain, if you like. Obviously, last year with the 2 Grand Slam finals, one of which, of course, occurred at the French Open. And it did come across a little bit like, and also, by the way, when you're the opponent, such as Casper in this occasion, you can feed off that a little bit. If there is any anxiety to the side of the net, you go, he's a little bit anxious, and you can maybe become more confident. And Casper does feel like the sort of player who always has the time in the world. And one final point before I come back to you, Gill, is that he was getting his spots nicely, I think, with his serving, Casper, which I think from Holger's point of view, when you're sort of trying to get inside the baseline, you don't mind speed. You're okay with reacting quickly because that's your strength. The only thing you can't really deal with when you're on the baseline or even inside it is spot serving. If it's super accurate, there's not much, because even if you get your racket on it, you're not really returning it with any purchase. If you'd like to respond to anything I've said anyway.
Sure. Casper's serve is super underrated. I mean, it's so good. It's allowed him to have these hard court results more than anything. Sure, maybe there have been some other adjustments, flattening out the backhand a little bit, being able to kind of play from a more aggressive or more close in court position. But at the end of the day, like the reason he's making the ATP finals in Turin at the end of last year on literally the quickest surface of the year, it has been mostly because of his serve and obviously the forehand he brings behind it. I think Casper's exhausting the play. The way the forehand utilizes the width of the court, he's able to break the sidelines on his inside out. The intensity of his inside in forehand, which is so good. It really, and the RPMs that push you back. It's a very tough task physically trying to defend against him. The other thing is sometimes he won't put you out of your misery as quickly as some others, because instead of coming forward, he'll hit 3 more forehands and he'll just have you on your horse. So yeah, if you're feeling like you don't want to run a lot, Ruud is a tough opponent to have to contend with.
Always another note I made, which is nicely segued in, is that always making you hit another ball, which if you are a little bit anxious is something you don't want to be doing. Always making you chase and often getting close to the lines in the rallies too. So listen, as you said, it was a result that perhaps some of us thought could happen, particularly in the wake of the Cerundolo match. Do we need to be concerned for Holger at all? If it was anxiety today, do we need to be a bit more concerned on a broader level, in that maybe he's always going to be someone that struggles to deal with big occasions and pressure and expectation, or are we jumping the gun a little bit with that?
Yeah, I think that would be jumping the gun. I actually think all in all, in his career, he's played big matches exceptionally well. I mean, you look at the record against top 5 opponents, and now I think it's 7-3 now. It was obviously 7-1 heading into that Rome final against Medvedev. I really think my lasting kind of thought about this clay court season from from Rune is that the tennis improved drastically. He showed that the level of tennis is there, but physically, you're going to need to build up your endurance. You're going to have to find a way. Remember early in Holger's career, and I'm talking when he was still outside the top 100 playing challengers, cramping was the problem. Well, he's not cramping anymore. He sorted that out and he found a solution. But the next thing is, I'm not cramping, but how can I be more energetic and not fatigue, not only throughout a long match, but also throughout a long and physical season?
Well, there were three other semi-finals today on the men's and the women's side. Let's get to Casper Ruud's opponent in the upcoming semi-final, which will be Alexander Zverev, who overcame Etcheverry in 4 sets. Is that the kind of result and match that we expected? Probably, if you pushed me to a prediction beforehand, I would have said Zverev in 4. I never made it public, but it was kind of the one that, probably would have been most likely, no?
Yeah, I went 5, but I was
Okay.
between that. I was between 4 or 5 for Zverev, and I mean, I'd say with Alex, there have been some random, I guess, down performances this year. So you always have that in the back of your mind, which is like, is he going to bring it today? Is he going to perform? But I think the knowledge was there that as long as Zverev plays his tennis either at an A level or maybe even a B plus level, it's going to be enough. And I thought Etcheverry I thought he played well. I think Etcheverry mentally stayed positive. He stayed locked in. I don't think he was feeling the pressure as much as maybe he could have in his first major quarterfinal. But at the same time, I think tactically he let Zverev get pretty comfortable. He gave him a lot of pace. He gave him a lot of backhands. He didn't mix up his heights very often, didn't use the width of the court that much. It reminded me very much of like a Zverev Rublev head to head, where, I mean, what Andre does almost so well is just hammer the ball into right-handed backhands. And that is, you can get a lot done on tour hammering the ball into right-handed backhands. But Zverev, his backhand is such a shock absorber. He redirects pace so well on that side. He had a dynamic day with his two-handed backhand and a good day on the forehand as well. And it just didn't feel like Etcheverry was doing enough to make Zverev, who's a great player, feel uncomfortable.
Gill, I'm going to go a little bit left field here, and I hope I don't catch you out with that. I saw Etcheverry walk onto court, and the name and the crowd, and it was sort of 5:30, something like that, 6:00 local time, so it was pretty full. I heard the French Open music, that rhythm that's I don't know if it's recent or if it's old, but I've only started hearing it the last few years as the players walk onto court. And by the way, do you know if that rhythm I'm talking about that they've been using I remember them introducing it at least in 2020, but it could go back much further. It's the one whenever you watch a French Open video on YouTube, it's got that little intro rhythm music with the players moving around. Do you know the music I mean?
I probably do.
I think it's
but
violin based, but
yeah.
more importantly, and honestly, more importantly, is it's kind of got okay, it's the French Open. Okay, this is a big occasion. It's got that sort of Champions League vibe when they have that music going, and you're like, oh, okay. And I saw Etcheverry just looking a bit pensive, and I saw him just maybe with pursed lips and maybe even a little thing here. And I thought, oh, this is a pretty big occasion now. And you don't know whether you're in your early 20s or you're in your mid 30s. You just don't know whether this is it or not. And I do wonder if not necessarily Etcheverry today, but just in general, I just started to think, oh, could be quite a scary thing. And the music, by the way, can add to that in a weird way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a scary thing. That's why I was I was pleasantly surprised that I thought Etcheverry played as well as Etcheverry plays. Does that make sense? Like,
Yep.
He's a really good clay court player. I think at this point, given what he's done now, if we look at the full body of work and we ranked players on clay, I think he would check in probably between like 12 and 20 in your clay court rankings. And I don't think he did more than that and surpassed that, but I also don't think he underperformed. I my feeling for the match is that he made a pretty good account for himself, but maybe didn't leave his comfort zone, which I understand. That's a very scary thing to do. If you're going to try to change up the way you're comfortable playing in a big match against a player who is probably better than you, but oftentimes players are not willing to do that. So I thought Etcheverry performed pretty well, but maybe if you're going to criticize him, you say, okay, it was a bit of a safe performance where you didn't really throw as much at Zverev as maybe you could have.
Zverev, it's been I don't know how to put it. It's been 12 months, of course, since I was in the stadium when he screeched in pain against Rafa in that semi-final. And it's such an unusual injury that he incurred, in that normally we see tennis players kind of have a moment and it's like, oh, sometimes we don't even see a moment. We're just like, oh, it's a medical timeout. And, you're in the stadium and you start to ask questions, what's going on? By the way, when you're at home, you go on Twitter and all the rest of it because you don't necessarily know. And then you go, oh, okay. Then you start, in your mind putting things, oh, that's probably why he stretched for that point, or he didn't win that set or whatever. And most of the time we're obviously far off, but that was a different injury in that it was like, oh, I think within seconds, not long after, we thought this is done, because that was an unusual thing. And here we are, full circle, a year later, and he's into a semi-final again. I do have a broader question, though, and you can touch on both points, which is, I don't know, there is still a sense that the draw maybe for Alex this year, or Sasha this year, has maybe been a bit fortunate for him. And last year did feel like it's such an unfortunate moment, because it did feel like that was the peak of Zverev's career until now. And yet in 48 hours or just over that, he might be in a French Open final, which would, at least reach his zenith of the US Open. But does it feel like his level a year ago was still higher?
Yeah, there was certainly more under his belt in terms of form. I mean, he was coming off of a win over Alcaraz and a really, look, I think there's been some revisionist history. Somebody was in my Twitter mentions today, like, remember Zverev beat Alcaraz easily. It's like, all right, it was a fourth set tiebreak. Let's not act like it was a blowout there. But yeah, he was coming off of his first top 10 win at a major. That was a big weight off of his shoulders, because it was insane how long that stat kind of played out, that Zverev hadn't beaten a top 10 player at a major. And then that match against Nadal was going to be a battle of attrition. It was going to be first guy to collapse physically was going to lose that match, because there's no way they could have kept that up for another 3 sets with how physical it was. And I don't know who would have collapsed physically first. I really don't. Is he back? The crazy thing, and this is why I didn't really fully believe in Zverev coming into this Roland Garros. And even when Sinner and Medvedev went out in his quarter, and the thought was, oh, look at this Zverev, he's going to make the semis. And I was like, let's see. Is he? Because he had not beaten a top 20 player since the Alcaraz win before the injury, not a top 20 player. And now he has one because he beat Tiafoe. The draw has definitely been kind, but I also think that his level has been high. You're right. It's hard to know what to expect, though, coming into the semifinal. We don't have a lot of examples of Zverev winning these matches as of late against top players. We have some close losses to Medvedev in slow conditions. We have a pretty straightforward loss against Alcaraz on clay earlier in the year. But it's very tough to say where he's at, especially because as much as we respect Tomas Martin Etcheverry, it doesn't give you a good measuring stick for, what he'll look like against Casper Ruud.
It really doesn't, and we just don't know. And he could. By the way, he could win the French Open at a lower level than he was performing last year. That's also possible. He could just have an incredible serving day. That he can do that, right? I mean,
I can't see it. No, right. The
No, I
mental.
can't see it, but
Yeah. I mean, against Djokovic or Alcaraz in a final, it's hard to see, right? Especially just knowing that I've seen the glimpses of the second serve failing him under pressure. I've seen the glimpses of high pressure situations where he gets very, very defensive, doesn't hit out on his forehand, like those old habits. And I was slightly disappointed, honestly, at the start of the year. Now, I understood that it was going to take a little while for Zverev to get back to his best. That was completely understood. But one thing that throughout his career I've been a little bit critical of is, why does the second serve look exactly the same now for 6 years? Why is it never better when you can look at other players who have changed it and improved it? Djokovic, Sabalenka. I mean, Sinner is obsessively tinkering with his service motion because he's still not satisfied. Zverev hasn't really gotten to that point. So I do feel like he's the same guy, only with a little bit less under his belt, than has been someone who has struggled to get over the finish line, even when the opportunities present themselves.
I guess I'm clutching at straws, perhaps, but maybe it's this year with the lack of expectation and pressure. Maybe it may be a bit released and could see him at least reach the final. But 9 double faults today still suggests, I don't know. I look at that, and I don't normally pay much attention to that. I'm like you as well, that I'm also looking at the second serve at his peak, by the way. And I do think that during that French Open victory over Alcaraz and for 2 sets basically against Rafa, he was at a very high level, but still that there were second serves that Rafa was just having for breakfast in that semi-final last year because he was anxious.
Yeah, but and then always the question is, okay, now you're up a break in the final set. Are you going to hold on? I mean, that's the question there.
Against Novak or even Carlos, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So listen, Gill, we get a lot from you on the ATP side, and we get a lot plus interest. But I actually love hearing you talk about WTA, and I know you do stuff, especially post-match reactions. So we're gonna dip into your WTA knowledge right now, and I'll just sort of get my stuff out the way regarding the 2 semifinals on the WTA. We'll begin with Jabeur against Haddad. That was first on the agenda, albeit it would have been about 3 or 4 in the morning where you are, but it was a nice, comfortable 11 a.m. where I am. And, Jabeur took the first set. They were exchanging serves. It sort of had a feeling a bit like the quarterfinal that Jabeur had, where there were lots of breaks of serves as well. But Jabeur was just always that either break in front or just felt like she just had a bit too much for her opponent. However, the second set sort of actually, Jabeur, funnily enough, she seemed to be, just like in that previous match in the quarterfinal, the serve wasn't quite functioning. And I actually started making in my notes, as you do, like I'm looking forward to a semi-final and I'm thinking I'm going to speak to Gill later on. So I want to make a note of this. And so I made some notes like, she's going to be in the semi-finals, but she's not going to get away with a slow start on her serve. Well, of course, those notes had to be scratched out because she didn't get away with it today. And Haddad Maia punished her in the third set in a pretty brutal way, I would say. I think there were some signs of Jabeur of just like not just feeling down in the dumps and like not, again, I don't want to say accepting her fate, but she did talk about the physical issues she perhaps had in her press conference afterwards. She used the word hurried or rushed her way back for this tournament. And that's a thing that tennis players have, right? They have this calendar that, if one of these Grand Slams is on the horizon, you can't wait another week or two. We saw it with Rafa recently. He obviously had this injury, and if that injury is in a different moment in a different part of the year, maybe he has surgery, but he's got to get back on the court because he wants to win the best slam he possibly can. And to some extent, same with Jabeur, at least. And she obviously felt that. And whether that had an impact, but I do think in that third set, kind of there was a sort of lack of belief from her that she could get herself back in this match. And partly, probably predominantly, it came from the other side of the net. There's a great stat we can see that Nick has put up on the screen here about Haddad Maia's sort of warriorness and coming from set downs, and now she's in the semi-final. So I'd love to get your thoughts on anything I've said and more.
Yeah, well, what Haddad Maia has done physically kind of reminds me, I mean, it's entering kind of the Alcaraz US Open 2022 zone of how are you still standing? How are you still fresh in these third sets? In the second round, she goes 2 hours, 43 minutes against Schneider. In the third round, she goes 2:48 against Alexandrova. In the fourth round, she plays the longest match of the year against Sorribes Tormo, 3 hours, 51 minutes. And in this match, shorter points, short third set, it's still 2.5 hours. And I mean, Haddad Maia, first of all, fitness is the only reason her game can work, because she's like a ball machine. She's going to take, 75 to 80% of her shots cross court. They're going to be deep. They're going to be unattackable. She's really not going to miss very often. There's not going to be a lot of unforced errors. And she's going to make you kind of come up with something special to win the point over and over and over again. And for her to be able to just do that throughout an entire major, she needs to be so fit. And it's just unbelievable that she's been able to do it round after round on clay, which is the surface that's going to mute her offensive capabilities the most. And I think, it came down to Jabeur, I think mentally and physically, and those things are combined, just not able to have the wherewithal to deal with a Haddad Maia who was just not going to give her anything in that third set and was going to drag her into the physical trenches, because that's what Haddad Maia does. She keeps the ball deep and cross court and doesn't miss.
I love these losing positions that Nick has put up on the screen for us, that she's been in various moments. We can see, I think that's in the second round, perhaps against Alexandrova. Where is that a match point? Perhaps she's facing there against Sorribes Tormo. She's down a set and on the verge of a double break. She's also today at a really crucial moment serving at a set and potentially a breakdown as we get right in the deep moments of that set. When it got to the tiebreaker, though, because she saved that, and in fact, she was starting to put pressure on the Jabeur serve. I don't know. I went to that tiebreaker thinking, I think she's probably the favorite. Momentum is a huge. When we go into a tiebreak, Gill, do we kind of fuse two things in a way? One, momentum, and two, experience. So whether it be Djokovic going in against Khachanov, and you're thinking, actually that particular tiebreaker, I do think that Djokovic was starting to eke his way into the match, but sometimes you might, it could be Swiatek or whoever. We kind of go, oh, okay, Swiatek has not really shown a lot in this set, but it's Iga Swiatek. Or, Serena Williams has not shown a huge amount in this set, or Novak Djokovic has not done much in this set, but it's Novak. And we kind of fuse those two together. The momentum and the way that set has just panned out as a block and experience. And then we sort of go, okay, we'll put those two together, and this is who I'm picking for the tiebreak.
Yeah, and I think it's also about, is there something you do that you can do under pressure in your sleep? So like for Isner, who has a great tiebreak record in his career, it's the serve. And for Djokovic, he backs his legs and his defense and his consistency, and he's trading and just applying pressure with his depth. Alcaraz kind of throws the kitchen sink at you. Swiatek, again, can back her legs in a tie break and can can cover the court and trust her defense. So I think you need something that you can really, really rely on. But then outside of that, yeah, momentum. I would love, this would be a good tennis abstract study. I love some of the blog posts that they do, but I wonder, does the player who has generated more break points in the set win in the tie break more than 50% of the time? That would be a great study.
It
So,
would be, yeah.
so good idea we've just hatched.
I've got another one, by the way, which is
Okay, go ahead.
abstract, actually, if you excuse the expression, is when you've got a break of, so when you're love 40 down, and let's go with, so yeah, I'm just looking at the next 3 points. Love 40 on your serve. I'm just interested. I don't want to know what happens after. I want to know. We're looking at the 3 points that follow. It should be 1/3 each, give or take a few. 33%, 34%, if you like, for the next 3 points. As that, if you follow. What I would feel though is that I think then we might see an unusual spike of failure or succession, depending on which side of the net you're on that second point. So I think at love 40, there's an almost not resigned, but a sense of, I think, what, I'm just going to go for it here. I don't feel the pressure, whether I'm serving. I think when it gets to 30-40, so this is how I'm going to be crazily predicting a million different matches in the tennis history. Is I wouldn't be surprised if we see most of those. So let's go 35%, which would be a huge jump, if that makes sense. If we're looking at 33.3 recurring as being the average, anything 34.5 or over on that next one, because I think once we get to the third one, you're serving, you're thinking, oh, I might get out of jail here. And if you're returning, you're thinking, oh, I might have missed my boat here, if you like.
Yeah,
So
I better convert this.
I'm not, now that there's a real, and even though really the pressure should still be on the server, he or she may be thinking, oh, I've got a chance to get out. And even though the pressure should be off the returner, they're going, oh, I could be really passing up my opportunity to break. And I haven't had a break point for an hour or two, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, that's abstract and that's elsewhere.
Yeah.
Unless you want to say something on that.
I very much agree with your assessment. There's a different psychology to each point. I'm curious. I don't know who the love 40 mentality favors, server or returner. But I think the scoreboard has such an effect on how you play. And that's why I always take issue, for example, if someone says, if there's a 2 sets to love comeback in best of 5, and they say, if this were best of 3, the other player would have won. And it's no, not necessarily. Like,
No.
that's not how this works.
No.
So yes, the scoreboard affects the play. There's no doubt.
I want to get a broader sense from you regarding Jabeur, which is she's going to be turning 30 this year. I'm pretty sure. That she seems to have the game, but I sometimes wonder, something you mentioned about 2 or 3 minutes ago as well made me think about this as well, is can having too many options, too many weapons, almost in these pressure moments as well, in a tie break, just make you go, oh, I don't know, what should I use the drop shot? I sometimes thought that today, that she was wondering what to do with all the array of talents that she has. And just broadly, I worry about her. I also worry about Casper, even though he's a lot younger, just because of those 2 slam finals last year. And you never know when. I remember, I go back a bit further than you, Gill. I remember Jana Novotná in the 90s at Wimbledon, and everyone saying, don't worry, you'll be back. And fortunately she was. And that's a story for another day. And I'll go into deep detail on that. But so many of these players don't get another chance. And with Ons, I have this fear. I mean, she in 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now, she could be lifting that Wimbledon title, and that's how tennis is. But
right, no, but I agree with your fear. I agree with it. She she does have a game that can be difficult to execute with nerves and pressure. And I do think she feels a lot of that.
Yeah.
I think she plays with a lot of emotion on the court, sometimes negative emotion. She's the minister of happiness off the court.
Yeah.
I do wish she was more of that on the court, because I think she can go dark in bigger matches. It might even be a heightened tendency for that to happen. The good news is her skills are should lend itself well to continuing to play well through her 30s, just because it's
Yeah.
not all that reliant on the physicality. Now, she does need to stay healthy 100%, but it's not somebody who is like, I don't know, maybe Caroline Wozniacki, who you could have never seen her play until 35 years old. It was just going to be
Yeah.
too hard and too physical, right?
Yeah. That deftness of touch. By the way, it's ironic. I looked up at my TV right now because they're showing some of the shots of the day, and the first one they showed was an Jabeur one, but there were some similarities with the Wimbledon final today. Winning the first set, goes, second set doesn't quite go on his way, and then the third did feel a bit inevitable. But listen, we are moving swiftly on, so I want to get to the next and final women's quarterfinal, which was between Swiatek and Gauff. I watched this match pretty closely, and you could just easily look at that scoreline and go, yeah, that's kind of how I probably imagined it to go. Straight sets, Iga sort of, maybe doesn't win the first set super comfortably, but then gets in her rhythm. I actually thought that Gauff, for 9 games, and I think it was at 15-30 on the Iga serve at 4-all in the first set, and Gauff was doing pretty much everything that she could and should do. She was being aggressive. She was hurrying and harrying and getting, not I wouldn't say she was hiding the forehand. The forehand was fine. I don't think you can hide the forehand. You can hide a backhand a bit, and I've done so myself. But I think it's harder to hide the forehand, and I'll give you my thoughts on this, Gill. Is that on the forehand, you can hide your backhand side, because you can give yourself more space on the forehand side. You can hit the forehand early, you can hit it late. You feel good, and you feel quicker even. You feel as though you've got an extra spring in your step as you chase that forehand down, whether it be on the run or otherwise. On the backhand side, if you're really good at the backhand, and Coco is one of the best, probably the trick is hitting it early and sweetly and just unbelievably. So there's no running round the backhand or running around the forehand to hit a backhand option, because you're just then going to hit a weird backhand if your strength is just hitting it crisply. Does that make sense?
Yes, it definitely does. Benoit Paire, I think, might have the best inside-out backhand
Okay.
that I've seen. I'm trying to think. Sometimes you'll see it. I guess it's probably even more common for the women than the men, because generally the backhands are closer to the forehands there. But especially on clay, I'll add that the RPMs are so essential. If you want to create offense on clay and you don't want the court to take away all of the speed in your ball, you need the heavy topspin. And biomechanically, you're never going to really get that on the two-handed backhand to the same extent that you're going to get that on the forehand. And that's why for Coco, it's quite essential. And that's why Iga, who has more RPMs on her forehand than anybody else, gains an advantage from that on clay in particular. And it's a big difference between the two.
Okay, so Iga is through. She, who can stop her? What can stop her, Gill? How can she be stopped? I guess we're looking at her levitating here as well. So there's no end to her talents. Who was that American guy who was in a box at Tower Bridge in London and did all sort of crazy tricks and stuff? I'm catching you out here, Gil. This is a backhand.
Is it David
Yes,
Spade?
Blaine. David Blaine.
Yeah.
There we go. We got Gil. No, you didn't realize you were going to get David Blaine on a tennis podcast. But anyway, listen, what and how can she be stopped? And I guess we're going to be talking about potentially Sabalenka. I guess that's the only way, in a way.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, I think for her, it's a little bit similar with honestly Alcaraz. You have to take away her time. Haddad Maia isn't really going to do that to her. She's probably going to feel pretty comfortable in the Haddad Maia matchup. And in order for Iga to lose that, she's probably going to need to make quite a few errors. Sabalenka can bring a level of power, particularly on the return of serve, that takes away Iga's first strike, rushes her forehand, makes her play more defense. And that's really the key. And I do think that Sabalenka, although Rybakina got a win over Iga in the lead-in on the red clay, I think Sabalenka moves a lot better than Rybakina. It puts her in a better position to hang in there on the baseline rallies, because we know where Iga's main rivals, where Rybakina and Sabalenka separate themselves, is the serve, and particularly the first serve. On clay, that's diminished. That makes things easier for Iga. I think Sabalenka has the best chance of even overcoming that and still going toe-to-toe with Swiatek, even without the benefit of, serving her off the court.
I was at the Madrid final about 3 weeks ago between the two, and it was sensational. If they could repeat that, we would have another WTA Grand Slam final that would be up there with the Australian Open as well, and that would be amazing. And it's one reason I yearn that final. No disrespect to Haddad Maia or Mukova as well, but anyway, let's see how that pans out. Before you go, Gil, I cannot let you go without getting 60 seconds from you on a certain match that maybe or will be occurring on Friday. I say maybe because I've got my thoughts in my head. Will it be the afternoon or will it be the night? It should be and probably will be the afternoon match in Paris. Is there any flexibility on that, by the way? Because you'd imagine TV want it at night. I know. Anyway, yeah. What is it? Definitely going to be in the afternoon.
I've heard it's going to be afternoon, but
okay. Me too, but I don't know. TV will want that night, right?
Yeah, I also I don't think it's much of a difference. I mean, we're talking about a couple of hours, so now. I would not say that there's a fairness issue. So I don't know.
The precedent skill has been, pretty much every year. It's always the Tuesday the Tuesday quarterfinal would be the first, but every year TV gets more and more powerful, and there's a separate podcast to do on the night sessions, and I do think that TV broadcasters have been ignored in the debate, and that's great for the TV broadcasters, but that's for separate thing. I do want to get 60 seconds from you, Gil, though, on this upcoming encounter, because I'm sure you're going to go into a bit more detail yourself in the next 24 hours or so. Obviously, you have Monday match analysis, which the clue is in the title, is generally after the end of a particular week. And I know you have your 3 thing with 3 legends of the sport in Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. But I'm sure you'll be doing a preview show as well for this match. If you could give us 60 seconds into your gut feelings on it.
Yeah, no problem. So I don't think the fact that Alcaraz has looked so dominant in form, even in comparison to Djokovic, I don't think that matters at all. And I think that's been way overstated as a factor here. At the end of the day, it's a new match. It's a new day on Friday with new disruptions and all new pressures. That said, I think Djokovic is the path to victory for Djokovic, I would assume, looks a lot like what Jannik Sinner has done to Carlos Alcaraz, which is be aggressive on return, hug the baseline, hit big off both wings, and rush him, take time away from him. Because when Alcaraz has had time, particularly on his forehand, whether it be throughout the clay season or Indian Wells, it's just been lights out. So I think Novak just needs to smother him and be very offensive in this match. And my big decision maker here is I don't think the conditions are going to allow him to do that. I mean, this has been very, very slow, and it's going to be hard to rush Alcaraz. I think he's going to have time regardless, just because of how slow these balls are moving through the air. And that also takes away Djokovic's serve return advantage. Novak's the better server. He's the better aggressive returner. Guess what? It doesn't matter as much. They're going to be playing more from neutral, where I think Alcaraz's power, his weight of shot, his speed, his scrambling, I think those things are going to come out a lot more. And I look for Alcaraz to play another incredible match here and beat Djokovic.
Are you going to do something in the next 24 hours on this match?
I will, yes. In the next 3 hours, I think I'll have something up.
Oh, we've eaten 45 minutes into your time. So what will that be on your channel? I'm just trying to get a picture. And also.
Yes. So it'll go up on Gill Gross YouTube channel, as well as the Monday Match Analysis podcast platforms, or the podcast feed. And then also a preview with my colleagues, Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy, on 3, the tennis show.
Have you thought about different ways of doing this? Because you could incorporate Alcaraz, but now Nadal is injured. You could get Iga in there somewhere. I don't know.
Good question.
I know you posted something recently about tennis's obsession with the word 3, or the letter, or the number, I should say 3. But are you and I guilty in this obsession?
Well, maybe because I have a show about it, but look, what we figured out is the 3 is actually us. It's us 3. That's the 3.
Oh, I see. Yes, I heard that. I thought, that's pretty clever.
Yeah, so that's where we've pivoted.
Gill, thanks very much for your time. I hope we cross paths again soon. Maybe in New York. Are you going to be working there this year again?
Yes, absolutely. I will.
Great. Gill, you can float off and spend a couple of hours cultivating your show on the Alcaraz Djokovic. Thank you very much for sharing one or two of your thoughts today on that match and everything else. Nick is going to be your substitute, so you'll be doing high fives with him as you walk off the stage. And just want to say a big thanks for joining us. Make sure you check out Gill Gross on Twitter, which is @Gill_Gross, as you can see there, and various other platforms, but in particular YouTube. You can hear his analysis in full. Thanks, Gill.
Thanks so much, Sean. Thanks.
Thank you. Speak to you soon. Just sail off. Exactly. We'll bring in Nick. Hopefully I'll do this. And hey, there we go. Nick is on. How are you doing? Thanks, Nick. For those of you, by the way, let's come to the one or two of the comments. And I can now, Nick, I hope you don't mind, but I feel a bit more relaxed. I'm going to just pour myself a glass of wine. I had the dregs. I had the dregs of a glass that some very eagle-eyed people may have seen during that chat with Gill, and it was great to hear his thoughts. And yeah, thanks as well for obviously doing your stuff there, putting stuff on the screen. But Nick, I want to get your thoughts on the women's semi-finals to come. They'll both be tomorrow. Let's do Sabalenka Mukova, because that's obviously one that we didn't touch on in today's show. Sabalenka's the favorite, right?
Yeah, she is. Judging by the way she's played, she's not dropped a set yet this tournament. No, she's not dropped a set yet this tournament. And she's got the power to overwhelm anyone on clay, with the exception of Swiatek. I think Mukova has the capability of testing her. I think Mukova has the capability of pulling off the upset
Yeah.
with her variety, with her game, with just sort of the smoothness of it and the fact that, she could pretty much do anything with a tennis ball. I think her game's stronger on grass, but I think she's one of those great natural surfaces players that come on strong, particularly in the women's game right now. But yeah, Sabalenka's the one with the form, and I think we'll have to see. Mukova had great preparation against against Pavlyuchenkova.
That means that and I'm guessing this is JG. That means JG had Mukova in the semis. That's what that means. You won't hear anything from JG for 6 months because every single prediction he's got is wrong. And then he just suddenly from the woodwork appears because he had Mukova in the semis. Oh, it's Ben. Okay, it's Ben. Okay, well there you go. Well, they're both the same. They're both the same.
I mean, I'm sure they would be thrilled. The idea that they are actually the same person. I'm not sure they would be actually in real life.
No, they're not a collective. No, not quite.
But
Siamese twins.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the maybe the talking tennis, I don't know who comes part of the team. I think if you looking at the predictions that everyone did on the TNS app, Miles actually put Mukova in the semis. He didn't get anyone else right. He predicted the top half of the draw being Zhang versus Paolini.
Oh, the thing is, the Mukova thing was all about that first round against Sakkari, wasn't it? And I think most of us thought it was 55-45 in Mukova's favor. And then I guess most of us put her in our quarterfinal. But that was also probably where we stopped as well on the Mukova train.
We thought she might lose to Pegula if she got that far.
Yeah. Although of all the seeds that she could come across, she was probably maybe fortunate to come across Pegula, and obviously one of Pegula's victors, if you like. But Coco Gauff, who we're going to get to in a second, I actually think I've got some positives about Coco Gauff that I'd like to express, but we'll come to that in a second. So, but Mukova, Sabalenka, Sabalenka's winning, right?
I think
a hesitation, Nick. Okay.
So it's a likely outcome, but I'm not fully confident in it. I think that Sabalenka has a. I would put her chance. I don't know if I want to put a number on it, but I'd say there's a decent chance of an upset here. From Mukova, just because of the way she's been playing, the way that she's been able to dismantle the power game of Pavlyuchenkova, albeit Pavlyuchenkova did run out of energy a little bit. Sabalenka probably won't. She'll probably be able to maintain the intensity. Max? I
don't get a hello, it seems, but
it's because you've been here for the last hour or so, John.
Oh, I see. Oh, by the way, in terms of the chat, we I'm sorry, I'm sure we've had some amazing questions and amazing thoughts, and perhaps we would normally share them on the screen, but we didn't get a chance to do so. So I do apologize. Probably Ghosty has had amazing questions, philosophical and otherwise. Ghosty's here saying yeah, right. Say, don't forget me. But Max may, exactly. Max probably said hello to me about an hour ago, and I just didn't pick up on it. There we go. I knew I shouldn't have started that new one. Nick, I know it's obviously getting late in the UK. It's getting late here in Bonn, albeit that tomorrow is a holiday in Germany. But I don't think it is in the UK.
It is definitely not. No.
Would
that it was. But I'm happy to continue talking for another 5 or 10 minutes.
Oh, great, Nick. I love that.
Because we haven't talked about the other semi-final yet, and we can't leave the audience missing out on that.
We will be talking about it. Let's talk about it now. Nick, before I get your thoughts, I said I wanted to express some positivity about Coco Gauff, who obviously didn't quite make it to that semi-final, but it was quite close, wasn't it, in a way? I thought the match, maybe there was always a sense that Iga would win it, But at 15-30 in that first set at 4-all, I think Gauff didn't really put a foot wrong. And that's the trouble against Iga, which probably everyone on the tour except for Rybakina and Sabalenka, and even that is surface dependent. Everyone on the tour just has to play their absolute best to live with her. And that's pretty difficult to do over 2 or 3 hours.
It is. And I think there's some positives. I think what Gauff was trying to do was actually pushing Swiatek. I think Swiatek just had a little bit too much to counter it. Funnily enough, I've actually literally just submitted an article to Popcorn Tennis about Coco Gauff.
Cool.
So we'll wait to see when that comes out. But talking about the positives we can take from Gauff at the minute, the positive Gauff could take at the minute, the progress that she's making, and the fact that she's still got a lot of opportunities. I think that she may well, if she could figure out how to make that forehand a little bit more consistent, maybe she can trouble Iga. She's shown that like she was putting everything high to Iga's backhand, forcing Iga to adjust. But it's the kind of clay court tennis that Iga's probably grown up dealing with. She's going to have to come up, I think, maybe on a hard court, different story. I'll be interested to see what happens when the next play each other. But I'd say there's still plenty of positives to talk about from Coco Gauff's career right now.
Yeah. I also was there for the match against Badosa in Madrid. And I think that today was sort of night and day. They were just completely different performances, completely different levels of belief. She had a game plan today, which I think she pretty much executed. It's difficult to keep going. There may be 1 or 2 regrets about the second set, but you know, even if she managed to pull it out the bag in the second set, you then got to do it for another hour. As I said, I think there's a lot of pause. In a way, her clay court season, these last two clay court seasons have kind of mirrored each other, actually, in that, okay, she went out in the quarterfinals at the French Open this year, whereas last year she got to the final, but she just ran into Iga, and maybe the best path for her to get to the final again was to avoid Iga, and maybe even if she wanted to win the title, to avoid her entirely. No, I think I also felt a clarity of mind from Coco today, which I didn't sense in Madrid, as in, I've got a game plan, I'm going to execute it. It helps in a way to be the underdog in that situation, because it's like, you know, I'll do my best. If I lose 1 and 2, you know, that's how it is. But this is how it's going to give me a chance of at least making this competitive and perhaps even winning the match. And I didn't feel as though her mind was as in such a bad way as it was in that Badosa match in Madrid, if you remember, when the forehand, it was just like I said to Paola in the press conference afterwards, she was just giving the forehand to her and just waiting for it to break down.
Yeah, and you got that clip very, very sort of expertly. Which is a great moment, and
it's a great moment for me, Nick. Yeah,
it's a great moment for a lot of people. Yes. By the way, I don't know if anyone's heard, but there seems to be everyone in the audience has heard, but apparently Badosa and Tsitsipas might be an item now.
Yeah, I think it's more than might.
The hints are fairly strong.
Yeah.
The hints are fairly strong.
We'll do it when maybe there'll be a talking tennis too with those kind of stories on it.
Yeah,
and I don't mind.
Maybe not. I probably won't be on that one.
Maybe not. I don't mind touching on it. I mean, listen, I'm not a killjoy entirely. I'm not here to say we talk about tennis, we don't talk about the romance. I'm all for it, and it's been nice because obviously Badosa is unfortunately injured right now and had to pull out the French Open when she was starting to show some form. Tsitsipas has not had the best 24 hours on the court, but I've seen some images of them together today, and yeah, nice.
See how it goes. Yeah. But on Gauff, I think a point I'm going to make in the article actually is I do not think we've seen Gauff's best level yet. I cannot think of a Coco Gauff match where we've watched it and gone, she could not play better than she did, or played at a level that comprehensively outplayed the opponent. So let's see what happens when what happens later on in her career, because, you know, maybe the next time she plays Iga or someone, it's going to be the match of her life, and that's the one where she finally unlocks where her top level will be. I'm excited to see what that is.
I think I threw you a little bit by this comment on the screen, but I'm pretty
No,
sure.
I saw it way before you did.
Did you? Okay.
Unlike you, John, I watched the chat.
I think it's basically Talking Tennis 2 is cancelled before it even gathered any pace whatsoever. Okay, listen, we've had a little laugh, and we've also expressed some favoritism or at least some optimism, sorry, for Coco Gauff. But Iga Swiatek has to play in the semi-final. Of course, she's going to play Haddad Maia.
Yeah.
Haddad Maia's chances or route to victory, is there one?
Well, look, Haddad Maia beat Swiatek the last time they played. It wasn't on clay, but
you talking about tennis, or was it a computer game or ping
no,
pong?
No. They played each other.
I know. I'm kidding. It's just like you say, it wasn't on clay. It wasn't even on a tennis court. It was at hard 10 days ago.
Yeah,
or chess.
They actually played each other at football or something. Got on the basketball court, throw some hoops. So I think also Haddad Maia, whilst might not being a power player, does have the ability to grind things out. She could maybe absorb some of what Swiatek has thrown her. And actually, I'm just looking at their head-to-head now. Yeah, they only played once, and that was at Toronto last year, and that was a battle. I think Swiatek is the favourite. I think Haddad Maia could make life very difficult for her. But I'm probably more confident that Swiatek beats Haddad Maia than Sabalenka beats Muchova, if that makes any sense. But those are the most likely outcomes.
Yeah, I mean...
and now I've said that out loud. This means that it's going to be a Haddad Maia Sabalenka final.
My broad thoughts are that it probably will be a Sabalenka Swiatek final, but Swiatek pretty certain, Sabalenka 60-40, I guess. Yeah. Probably more because I'm just not sure if how Sabalenka will deal with Muchova in a way. I think she can be a tricky opponent, not quite the same as Ons in that sort of unpredictability, but I think if it's just a direct power opponent, sort of just going for it toe to toe in the way that maybe I know it was a different side of the draw. I think Pavlyuchenkova. Who did Pavlyuchenkova lose? Oh no, she lost to Muchova. So yeah. So I just think that actually against Pavlyuchenkova, I think Sabalenka would have been the hot favorite. Actually against Muchova, it may well be a trickier opponent, but I'm here for Sabalenka Swiatek final. Not necessarily because I now that Sabalenka's over the Grand Slam hill, if you like, I'm okay with whether she wins one more or not, no more, or 100 more, if you like. I enjoy her brand of tennis, and I loved that Madrid final. Whether I know you have inclinations towards Iga, but I would love to see, another epic between those two.
Look. Actually, to be honest, I'd be up for that as well. I'm a tennis fan first, and I want a good match. I don't think we're going to get a repeat of what happened in Madrid if they play.
I understand. Yeah,
I things are going to be a little different, but I think that I think it would be Iga Swiatek's hardest Roland Garros final of her career so far. Of the three, because like before she played Kenin, who is a good player but was maybe slightly injured, and then she played Gauff, who she has a very heavy matchup favorite against. I think Sabalenka might push her more. Although having said that Kenin match in 2020 was more competitive than maybe people remember, because that first set was really featured quite a few momentum swings, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, I think it will be a very, very good match. I think whether it's 2 sets or 3, it's going to be close sets. And I think if they both make it without dropping a set, it's going to have one of those unstoppable force meets an immovable object type finals, and I'm here for it.
Nick, thank you for those thoughts on a final that may never even happen, by the way.
Wait till we get Haddad Maia versus Mukova.
Yeah. If we get Haddad Maia, Mukova, no, I don't think I will. But even if we do, I'm definitely not going to clip this and put it into a short. Our thoughts on the French Open 2023 final between Sabalenka and Swiatek, the match that never happened.
You know what short that you have clipped that I have watched multiple times is Isabel being scared by a squirrel.
Yeah, and make sure you check that out. I did get permission from the squirrel before putting it on on YouTube as a short. No, I chatted to Isabel as well and made sure it's okay. Yeah, that's out there in the internet ether as a short. So make sure you check that out. We also have other things that are worth checking out coming up in the next few hours and days. We have, of course, both women's semi-finals on the channel tomorrow. I say on the channel, I should say as a watch along, of course. But hopefully you can
exclusive Roland Garros deal.
Yeah, I know. We've sabotaged various other organizations and got a coup.
John, I'm sure you could negotiate change. You've been able to negotiate many deals. I'm sure you could negotiate that one.
That would be one of the biggest coups in history. The biggest coup since somebody ousted Gorbachev for a few days, but maybe Ghosty's the only person who can remember that. I think Gorbachev came back anyway, so that was great. But if you're a Gorbachev fan, it was great. If you weren't, then less so. But listen, I'm going down a very unusual alley. I'm almost like the squirrel that's running into the window of Isabel's house. So I just want to remind everyone that we're going to have both semi-finals watch-alongs on the channel tomorrow. That'll be, of course, Iga Swiatek against help me out here, Nick.
Haddad Maia.
Thank you very much. A match we were just previewing just a few minutes ago, and now I've forgotten who she's playing. I hope Iga can remember. And Sabalenka, of course, against Mukova. And then we'll have both semi-finals on Friday on the men's side. One of which will be Djokovic against Alcaraz, of course, probably the early one, but we still don't know that for sure. And then the latter one, which will probably be Zverev against it's midnight. Ruud, thank you very much, Casper Ruud. Yes, of course. Now that was a while since I last spoke about Casper Ruud, and I think Nick, you'll be doing the second men's semi-final.
I am doing the second one, and really, really hoping that it's going to be Alcaraz Djokovic.
Yeah, of course, I know. I said to Owen, by the way, Owen's going to come on and do a little sort of 10-minute. Owen from Popcorn Tennis, of course. Owen, one of the CEOs, founding editors of Popcorn Tennis, is going to come on. And I said, he said, I'll come on after one of the two semi-finals and do 10 minutes. I said, what Zverev against Ruud? And he went, no, I'll take the steak and chips, please. And so he'll come on and give us 10 minutes after the Alcaraz Djokovic match to share his thoughts on proceedings. We've also got Amy Lundy as well, who's going to come on for 10 minutes ahead of the Alcaraz Djokovic match to share her thoughts as well. She's written an article recently, which I'm sure she'll be touching upon as well. So yeah, still, by the way, if Conchita Martinez, I should say, is watching, or Monica Seles, or Justin Nena, we're all up for you coming on after the French Open women's final on Saturday and sharing your thoughts. Maybe even Joe Conter, even. I mean, Conter, but for the semi-finals would be a nice one. I thought about having Conter on as a French Open semi-finalist from 2019, was it, Nick?
It was 2019. Surprised lots. Well, many people were surprised by the loss of Vondrousova. Now, not so much.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, anyone who's ever played tennis. Ghosty, do you want to come on for 10 minutes? And
this is where we know John's had wine.
Nick, thank you very much for joining us for the last, as it turned out, 20 minutes. And we'll be crossing paths again very, very soon.
Oh, I'm very excited for it. Very excited for it. Thanks, John, for having me on, and glad I could have a crack at producing.
Great. And to everyone else, thank you for stopping by. I'm going to play that amazing video that I showed you earlier as an outro, and then the usual reminder to subscribe. Take care, Nick, and speak to you soon.
Speak soon.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.